Beautiful. I'm going to run and get in.
Go,
Freeze! Hi, babe.
So right before he passed away, he asked me for this picture. We had taken some family photos at Maddie's at Christmas time. And there's this one photo where and this was a frequent photo that we would end up taking, he'd kind of grab me.
There's this complicated family situation centered around Cody, his multiple marriages, and how the dynamics have played out over time, especially where the children are involved. The core of the discussion focuses on two very different women in Cody's life, Robyn and David, and how their approaches to family and relationships have influenced the overall atmosphere. On one hand, David is seen as someone who naturally fits into the family, someone kind, funny, and genuinely caring. He's appreciated for his ability to support the family without overstepping boundaries. He's not competing for attention or control, and he seems to build positive connections with the children and other family members. His presence brings a sense of ease and warmth, and he shows empathy, understanding the pain of loss while still being a steady, supportive figure. People notice how, for example, in scenes like fishing or in the kitchen, David's behavior feels natural and welcoming. He doesn't insist on knowing everything immediately, but expresses a genuine desire to connect. Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to ThreadoraTalks, where the conversations are always next level. I'm your host, and today, we're turning things up a notch. Trust me, this is one video you do not want to miss, so let's dive right in. Robyn, in contrast, is portrayed as someone who struggled to embrace the plural marriage dynamic in a way that fostered harmony. Rather than being a unifying force, she's often seen as self-centered or manipulative, someone who holds on to ego and control. Instead of stepping back to allow the family to heal and grow, she appears to use her position to dominate, sometimes shutting down communication and acting like a victim. For example, moments where she seemed indifferent to family grieving or spent time focusing on vacations during somber occasions highlight her disconnect from what the family really needed. There's a sense that she could have played a vital role in smoothing relationships and encouraging the children to bond across the family, but chose not to. This leads to a broader reflection on responsibility. While Cody is acknowledged as the person ultimately accountable for how his marriages and family dynamics unfolded, Robyn's role is seen as significant because her actions and attitudes contributed to the divisions and tension. Yet, some argue that blaming Robyn alone misses the bigger picture of a deeply patriarchal system that put immense pressure on all the women involved, especially when jealousy and frustration were discouraged or labeled sinful. In this view, Robyn was fighting a difficult battle herself, wanting control and recognition, but also vulnerable to the structure that gave Cody the final say. The children's experience is a key point here. In blended families, particularly ones as complex as this, it's vital for step-parents to make an effort to connect with their stepchildren. Unfortunately, Robyn is criticized for not doing enough to build those bridges, which deepened the isolation some of the kids felt. David is held up as an example of how to do this well. His kindness and inclusion stand in sharp contrast. Still, some note that it would have been impossible for Robyn to replicate David's role, while she and the other wives were competing for Cody's affection, a problem rooted in Cody's failure to ensure fairness and balance early on. There's also a sense of sadness about missed opportunities, like large family spaces that could have been used to bring everyone together safely during difficult times but weren't, due to Robyn's protective and controlling approach. This contributed to keeping the family fragmented instead of united. The discussions point to a wider pattern where Robyn's desire for security and control seemingly came at the expense of empathy and genuine family connection. The conversation also touches on how personal insecurities and fears play into this. Robyn's ambivalence about polygamy, wanting the perks but not the sacrifices, and her fear of being replaced by a younger wife, appear to have influenced her actions and interactions within the family. There's a sense that she pushed hard for reconciliation with certain family members, not out of a pure desire to heal, but to protect her own position. Meanwhile, Cody seems increasingly isolated, with some family members expressing disappointment in who he's become. It's a complex web of individual choices, structural issues, and emotional wounds. One reflection that emerges is how these family struggles are a reminder of the challenges blended families face in any context, but especially in one where old patterns of control, jealousy, and competition are compounded by a rigid hierarchy. Ultimately, it seems clear that the family's future depends on whether those involved can move beyond blame and take steps to genuinely reconnect. The example set by David shows what's possible when kindness and empathy lead the way. Meanwhile, the situation also serves as a cautionary tale about the costs of allowing ego and fear to overshadow the needs of children and family healing. It's a reminder that even in the most complicated family situations, the chance for connection and growth remains, if only people are willing to reach out and let go of old wounds. I've been thinking a lot about the recent passing of Garrison from the show many have followed for years. What struck me is how little we truly know about his inner experience, but what we do see offers a glimpse into some painful realities. Reflecting on his story, especially through the lens of suicide research, helps make some sense of the heartbreak. One of the most respected theories on suicide comes from Thomas Joyner. He points out that while depression is common among people who die by suicide, most depressed people don't take that step. Depression alone isn't the whole story. Instead, Joyner's theory highlights three key factors that need to come together: feeling like a burden to others, feeling isolated or disconnected from belonging, and having what he calls the acquired capability to overcome. The instinct for self-preservation. That last part is critical. It's the painful process of becoming desensitized to fear, pain, or trauma that can enable someone to actually act on suicidal thoughts. When we look at Garrison's background, a few things stand out. His time in the military might have played a role in building that acquired capability. Military training often dulls the natural fear response and increases tolerance for pain or violence. That, combined with struggles like alcohol use, which can lower inhibitions and impair judgment, can create a dangerous combination. Alcohol is involved in a large portion of suicides, making impulsive or lethal actions more likely during moments when a person might otherwise resist. It's also deeply important to consider the emotional wounds from fractured family connections. The sense of losing parental love or feeling abandoned by a parent, especially if that rupture happens suddenly or late in a young person's development, can be devastating. This kind of betrayal trauma, when someone is harmed or let down by a trusted figure, can shake a person's very sense of self and belonging. Even adult children need deep parental connection, contrary to some beliefs that young adults don't require that bond anymore. There's a difficult dynamic when parental love becomes conditional, when it's expected to be reciprocated or earned through obedience or compliance. This idea that love is a two-way street in parenting can be spiritually and emotionally hollow, especially from a faith perspective that holds love as unconditional and self-giving. Parental love, like the divine love it often mirrors, is meant to be steadfast and repairing, not contingent. That kind of love carries responsibility even through pain and absence. One touching moment was when a parent carried Garrison's remains, a silent gesture of love without demands, acknowledging loss and absence with humility. Yet, it also reminds us that suicide within families can intensify risk for siblings, who may carry survivor guilt or wrestle with the tragic question of why them and not me. The shadow of suicide can ripple deeply. People also reminded us that not all suicide fits into one clinical theory. Sometimes it's about exhaustion. A person living with chronic pain, illness, or suffering who simply reaches a point of giving up, not out of despair alone, but out of a wish to end ongoing agony. This reality challenges how we think about agency, dignity, and the complex shades of suffering. In practical terms, suicide is often impulsive, sometimes triggered by a crisis or sudden event. Access to lethal means, such as firearms, drastically increases risk. In mental health care, removing such means is a vital safety step. Throughout the discussion, there's an honest acknowledgement that understanding the reasons behind such a tragic death is complicated and can feel uncomfortable or intrusive to some. But curiosity and seeking meaning can be natural responses to grief and loss. Talking openly, without blame, can help reduce stigma and open pathways to healing. For those touched by suicide, whether personally or through loved ones, there's value in learning about proactive approaches to prevention and mental wellness. Resources grounded in both science and lived experience offer hope and tools to build resilience in ourselves and our communities. Ultimately, while the reasons behind any suicide are deeply personal and often unknowable, reflecting on the many factors, emotional, psychological, social, and spiritual, reminds us of the profound importance of connection, compassion, and persistent love. It's a call to remain attentive, open-hearted, and committed to support, even when the path is painful and unclear. There's something deeply poignant about the way Logan moved during the funeral, the way he kept stepping forward, offering help, trying to support Janelle as she moved through that difficult moment. It was clear to many that Logan was filling a role much bigger than just a brother. He was a father figure to the younger siblings, the steady presence they'd relied on for years. Yet, standing there, Cody seemed to subtly block those attempts, as if unwilling to let Logan fully step into that space. It was as if Cody couldn't accept that Logan had taken on that role, despite Logan being the one who truly raised and supported many of the kids. The contrast was heartbreaking, Logan's quiet strength in the face of grief, and Cody's awkward distancing. The symbolism of the moment was heavy too. Cody was the one who physically lowered Garrison's urn into the ground, the hole he literally dug for his son. Some saw that as deeply symbolic, considering the emotional distance Cody maintained from his children over the years. Meanwhile, Logan's role as the rock for the family was undeniable. He was the one who showed up to cook breakfast, get the kids ready, and be the emotional anchor during hard times. Though Cody provided the DNA, Logan was, for all intents and purposes, the real father, the one the kids looked to and leaned on. There was also discomfort and even anger at the way Robyn's involvement in the burial unfolded. Some felt it was disrespectful for Robyn to have the honor of throwing dirt on Garrison's grave, especially given the complicated family dynamics and the pain many felt she and Cody contributed to. Janelle, in particular, was seen as handling the moment with grace, choosing to focus on her son and her own grief rather than stirring up conflict. But some wished she had taken a stronger stand, imagining what it might have been like for Garrison to have the final word on such a symbolic act. Throughout the funeral, the tension between Cody and his older children was palpable. Logan, Hunter, and others were clearly trying to support the family and honor Garrison, but Cody seemed almost dismissive or even resentful of their involvement. Even when Logan offered a hand to help Cody out of the grave, Cody refused, an act that many interpreted as a painful rejection, a refusal to accept support from the son who had effectively acted as a father figure for so long. This tension speaks to the broader family dynamic that has long been observed. Cody's relationships with his older children have often been strained, marked by feelings of neglect and parentification, the older kids stepping into adult roles out of necessity rather than choice. Meanwhile, the younger children with Robyn have remained more sheltered, creating a stark divide. There's a sense that Cody struggles with his role as a father beyond a certain point, and that the power dynamics within the family favor control and appearances over genuine connection. Many noticed how Logan, despite everything, continues to show immense class and kindness. He doesn't seem to harbor bitterness, but rather chooses to keep supporting his mother and siblings, refusing to get caught up in the drama. This was clear at the funeral, where he was careful not to let personal grievances overshadow the moment, even if inside he carried a heavy burden. Others reflected on the emotional toll this kind of grief takes, especially after suicide. The rawness of the family's loss was evident, and many found themselves moved by the openness and honesty they saw, even as it brought up their own personal experiences with loss. It reminded some how important it is to hold space for grief without judgment, and to recognize the complicated emotions involved. In the end, the story that emerged was one of resilience and complexity. The older children, especially Logan, stepped up in ways that defied simple labels. They carried responsibility, showed compassion, and kept family bonds alive, even as fractures ran deep. Cody's role, meanwhile, appeared more conflicted, caught between wanting control and connection, but often falling short. And through it all, Janelle's influence shone as a source of strength that helped shape those children into the people they are. It's a reminder that family is never just about biology or titles. Sometimes the real parents are the ones who show up, who carry the weight quietly, and who choose love and grace in the hardest moments. I recently finished watching the last episode, and I couldn't help but be disgusted by Cody the whole time. Not only did he make the entire burial about himself, but his dismissal of Logan was heartbreaking. But beyond that, something else really stood out to me. How terribly he treated that horse. As someone who's grown up around horses, I was honestly outraged. Here's a man who claims to be a great cowboy, yet he was clearly rough and clueless, pulling the reins too hard and causing visible distress to the animal. The horse's body language showed it was uncomfortable and in pain, and I don't even want to get started on how much weight he and Robyn put on it. It was way too much. Others noticed this too. The horse seemed confused because Cody didn't provide clear guidance, similar to how people have described his parenting, lacking leadership and care. It wasn't just the riding. There was a moment when McKelty fell off the horse. And instead of addressing the situation thoughtfully, Cody went to teach the horse a lesson. But the truth is, that horse had made its boundaries clear, and McKelty, being a teenager, ignored them. The adults should have been supervising more closely, especially on a working ranch with so many kids around. The fault wasn't with the horse, which was clearly scared, but with those who failed to prevent the situation. Punishing the horse for reacting naturally to fear only creates more fear and mistrust, something many agreed was both cruel and ignorant. This also brought up memories for one person who shared how their own childhood fears were worsened by adults trying to teach lessons through harsh methods. Instead of offering reassurance, they were punished or told their fears were justified, which only made those fears last well into adulthood. The same kind of harsh treatment towards scared horses or children doesn't help. It only deepens trauma. People also pointed out that Cody's riding technique was wrong on so many levels. Holding the reins too tight, sitting too far back, bouncing on the horse, and putting far too much weight on it. Even those with limited horse experience could see the poor horse was in pain. And it wasn't just Cody. Robyn's riding skills weren't any better, as she also pulled the reins incorrectly. Some felt this whole scene was a sad display of Cody's false cowboy image. He wasn't a skilled rider, just someone posing for the camera, showing off without regard for the horse's well-being. Others recalled that Cody never really had a true rancher's background, having left for a mission and returning to Meri, rather than growing up learning how to ride properly. His rough, abusive way with the horse seemed to mirror how many described his parenting: harsh, lacking empathy, and more about control than care. Stories from family members suggest that animal abuse wasn't unusual on the farm, which is heartbreaking. What's striking is how clear it was to many viewers, horse lovers or not, that this horse was in distress. The way Cody pulled the reins, the horse's hollowed posture, and the way it tried to signal discomfort were obvious signs of mistreatment. Even with minimal horse knowledge, it was easy to see that what Cody was doing was harmful. At the same time, some pointed out that Cody's ego seemed to prevent him from recognizing his faults. He acts like he's great at everything, parenting, riding, leading, but the reality looks very different. There's a sense that he's more interested in appearances than in genuinely caring for the animals or people around him. Reflecting on all this, it's hard not to feel a deep sadness. This wasn't just about a man riding a horse poorly. It was a snapshot of how a lack of empathy and understanding can cause real harm, whether to animals or to the people in one's life. It makes you wonder about the unseen moments, the times when the cameras aren't rolling, and how much more goes unnoticed. Ultimately, it's a reminder that true care and respect can't be faked or learned through showmanship. They come from genuine kindness and attention. All right, now I want to hear from you. Sound off in the comments and let me know where you stand. Agree, disagree, or something in between. And if you're enjoying the vibe, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you're always in the loop. Your voice counts, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for hanging with me.